This episode is proudly brought to you by the ELXA Life Duo Suite, lifeduos.com, with special thanks to Ms. Khomotso Moagaesi. We are the doers, the doing that makes a difference in life. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the ELXA Chat with Pros. As always, an ELXA Chat with Pros would be incomplete without my co-pilot. Mr. Malukwa, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Laura. It's the start of the week, so I feel refreshed and ready to kick it in this coming week.
Yeah, it's always the mood. Today we're taking the law into our own hands. Law and agriculture, how the two worlds tango. Understanding the laws of Botswana in agriculture, land issues, etc. Farming in the Kalahari district, pros and cons. Unpacking different types of acts in agriculture. Unspoken areas of the law. Agricultural property transfer and change of land use. What's the procedure? Lastly, available means for farmers to influence legislation, new and existing laws. To help us dissect this very interesting industry, we have Ms. Khomotso Moagaesi, attorney at Akil Genebai and Associates. Khomotso, we welcome you to the ELXA Chat with Pros.
Thank you very much, Thank you very much, Mr. Molokwe, for having me.
Thank you so much, Khomotso.
For those who don't know you, could you kindly tell us a bit about yourself? Who is Khomotso?
Okay, my name is Khomotso Moagaesi. Those are my full names. I am 29 years old. I am an attorney at law at Akil Genebai and Associates. I've been here since 2020, but I have over almost 5 years post-qualification experience in the legal fraternity. I grew up in a little town called Jwaneng. From a small little village. I think sometimes when you look in the map, you can't really see it. It's called King, down in the Kalahari area. Yes. So ever since I was a child growing up, I've always wanted to be an attorney. And it's so strange that even when I got to my varsity level, the first option and the only option I had was an attorney, like to do Bachelor of Laws. So it was really risky and very wild because if I didn't get it, I was just like, oh my goodness, I don't know what I'm going to be and what I'm going to do. Yeah, it's always been my passion. And yeah that's Khomotso.
Yeah. Briefly, you mentioned the struggles your parents faced farming in the Kalahari district. Is this perhaps what influenced you to take up law? Just seeing them go through those struggles and challenges?
Yes, I think basically for me, the reason why as growing up as well, why I wanted to be an attorney is I noticed as I was growing up, my dad passed away sometime in 2004 and I was actually like in Standard 4 at the time. So my dad was like real time, big time into farming at the time. So there was a lot going on, like when my mom took over now, the inheritance issues, the estate issues. It wasn't just only the cattle and the farming per se. It was also about the other assets that came into his estate and how she was supposed to deal with that. And coming from like, a layman cultural background, it was just like, okay, fine, the property must go now to the in-laws and so forth like that. And having that experience that my mom had with the law at whatever stage she had in her life, she was able to protect the assets and make sure that they still stay in the state and they are well distributed according to the law of administration of estates and so forth. So now she still has that cattle business going on because, she was aware of how the law is supposed to work in terms of estate and inheritance issues. And that made me get inspired to say, you know what, I just watched a video on YouTube at some point and someone was looking nice wearing an attorney robe and I was like, I want to be an attorney when I grow up. But then sitting down and actually understanding what it is to be an attorney made me think, okay, if my mom can do this, then I can do it too as an attorney one day in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's always an issue, the inheritance bit. It's always, it's always a big issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're glad that your mom managed to sort that out and maneuver her way around everything. And growing up you said you grew up in Jwaneng?
Jwaneng, yes. It's a small town, mining town called Jwaneng.
And how was that? How was life in Jwaneng before you came to the city?
It was actually okay. It was not really fast. It was okay. Every weekend we went to the farm and saw the cows. And every other weekend my dad was either buying cattle feed and mixing them and then getting ready to take them to the farm. So yeah, it was like a very slow, chilled and farm environment life as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you've always been exposed to the farming world, even as a kid.
Yes. So I just wanted to add also when you invited me to take up this podcast, I was so excited because I was like, I can really relate to what I've seen growing up and even now what I'm seeing with my mom going through the farming battle every other time. Yes, that it's like we grew up seeing this and there's not much change going on even as we're at this age. Yeah.
And that shouldn't be the case, isn't it?
No, it should be developing.
Yeah, yeah. You mentioned some of the challenges that your family faced. What are some of these challenges that you feel like the Kalahari district faces in the agricultural realm?
Okay. I think for us, basically, I know like how, when I started and I tried to introduce where I come from, this village called King, most people don't know where it is. Every time I have to introduce where I come from, people are like, are you from Gang? What are you talking about? So I'm like, no, it's King.
Can't
You go
you round it off?
Yes.
To the nearest village.
No, and the thing is so different. There's an A and there's an E.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
So,
Yeah, very interesting.
to direct people that, you go towards Sukoma, then there's the turnoff, the straight goes to Khansi, and then on the left, that's where you go to Sabong. So that turnoff to Sabong, there's like Kakia, just before Kakia, there's a small village called King. That's where I come from.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I think it's just very difficult for people to get it around that there's a place called Keng in Botswana.
Yes, I thought there was Khee. There is also Khee, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, no, I'm not sure about Khee.
Yeah, K. I think there's K and then, but anyhow, yes.
Yeah, there are many places.
Yeah. It has produced an attorney in yourself, so it deserves its place on the map.
Yeah, no, it's on the map. Yes, definitely. So yeah, in coming back now to say, you see, even the fact that it's a road, it's not really remote. It's a village somewhere in Botswana that's not really known. Even the audience, when we come and talk to our farmers in that area, and you have so many laws that you need to integrate them into, there's also always a mismatch in understanding of the agricultural laws. When you come and tell them there's something called a bait system, this is how you go online and you add your cattle into the bait system so we can be able to identify each and every cattle you have. They don't understand what you're talking about. So I think it should be maybe the role of legal professionals and people sitting in government offices, in the agricultural offices, to try and see ways to bring across this law in a simplified version for people in the Kalahari area. So it's more understandable. And, when people don't have phones that have online platforms, then you say we can open the offices so you can come in every single day to register for bait system. So it's even easier for you when you're selling cattle that, it's easy to identify this is your cattle, this is the brand number. It's easy to pick up on the bait system. And then the next part also, there's a lot that comes into agricultural law as well, right? There's the property, when you have your lease areas, your certificate, your title, whatever you have that ties you to the land that you're farming on. You need to know how are you on that property, right? Recently, we had this re-registration of leases and certificates, and some of our elders sitting in Kalahari area are sitting on these farms. They don't even know what we're talking about, where they start the process, and that's where we as the youth have to come in. So now imagine an old lady who doesn't even have anyone to rely on. Then they're on their own. Then the registration closes and they're still just there like, I used to have a farm. Now the government took it because I couldn't make it on time, right? And also, there's also, like I was saying also, numerous acts that relate to agriculture, right? It's not your Ministry of Agriculture that be interested in making those regulations and rules. There's also environmental acts, the environmental laws that come into play. There's corporate law that also comes into play. There's contract law also that comes into play. When you're selling your cattle, do you need to do an agreement or not? And sometimes someone can steal your cattle. You don't even know how to start explaining to the police that, oh, Ghana, my cow was stolen. My cow was stolen by my uncle. You get, it's like a family issue. So it's just a lot of whole issues that we deal with. And for me, the basis is just the lack of understanding that you find and then mismatch with the laws and the audience that it's supposed to be targeted towards.
Yeah. Offline, I mentioned to you how intimidating law is, with the big terms and nobody really understanding it. I think, if it can get simplified, a lot of people would be able to understand it. Also important, information being accessible, because I tend to wonder, is it because it's not accessible, this information, or is it, I don't know, maybe ignorance playing a role here? So thank you for that clarity. And when you're talking about online systems and all of that, come on, not everybody, has access to such.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And people end up missing out on opportunities and so forth. Like you just mentioned, you lose your land because you didn't make it on time, but you just didn't know where to go and what to do.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, what can be done? What do you think can be done to simplify this so that everybody is included, you know?
Okay. I think you see, I guess it's also more of our jobs as a legal attorneys to take the job out there. Maybe this would be something that we could start suggesting to law firms to say, put it as your corporate social responsibility, right?
Yeah, yeah.
To say we must go out to the community and try and explain this is what it means when we say the Travel Land Act has changed. This is what we mean when we say we're re-registering your leases and so forth. If the government won't be able to step up, then maybe we should also do that, you know, and it can't be billable. I don't know. I think I should understand because, you know, you're going to go to Kalahari, you spend the whole day there. It should be something you can put back and say, no, we did this for the community. And then I'm thinking for more campaigns and in-person meetings with farmers, especially from our Ministry of Agriculture, would have these. I'm not saying they're not there, would have these, but they'll be in more centralized places. Like, let's say you'd say Khansi Farmers Market, you'd have them in Zabun, you'd have them in Gaborone, you'd have it at the Northern Trade Fair and so forth. You know, you'd have it at, B1, you'd have it in the Sibili area, right? And you're talking to someone who's in King, who can't even get enough transport money, or someone who can't even speak English, let's start there. Someone who can't in English, and you want them to come to Gaborone. It's just, that's the first challenge they're going to have to say, I don't have the money. I don't even understand how I'm going to navigate Gaborone. So in-person meetings with the farmers in these areas would do a lot of, a huge difference, right? So you make these events accessible to the target audience that you want to actually benefit from them, right? You'd have your educational seminars because it's not just about the law. Also, sometimes farming just comes basically with, look, there's an outbreak of this certain disease in goats. This is how you can protect your goats. This is how you can keep them safe before you can even get to the veterinary stage. This is how you try and stop the contact with each other. This is what goes on, right? This would be something that would be nice coming from our Ministry of Agriculture, our district agricultural offices in every area. I know there's one also in Sukuma as well, right? And then for those who are lucky enough to have phones and platforms, then let's use social media. Let's use our phones. I know in my area, the village, they use RB1. So let's do that. Let's do the campaigns online, on social media, on the phones. I know there was one, I don't know where it ended. I'm not sure if you guys may know, but there was a time someone had devised, an SMS ask me link for anything agricultural related.
Yes.
And, you know, that was very nice because the person who created the idea said anybody can access it. You don't even need a social media phone. Just the Sedilame can work. You just need to go to, I guess, USSD code and you get all the information you need to know.
For legal practitioners, is there enough incentive for, you know, people, attorneys like yourselves to be, I know for you, it's a sentimental thing. I mean, you can relate with, or somehow, you know, it's there in your home village. You can actually see it when you do travel where people would need that kind of assistance. I was going to ask to say, is there enough incentive for attorneys to be, you know, spending their time doing that, or maybe an intervention of law society or even industry associations or something of that sort?
Yeah, I think so. You know what I'm thinking now? It would more be something that would come from the Farmers Association, Agriculture Association of Botswana. I don't know I'm sorry to not term them correctly, because we are private, most of these law firms, right? And particularly where I work, I'm also a private attorney. So they should be like the money. There should be an incentive for me to take an act and go out there and say, okay, I'm going to do this. So if it was something that would have to be done, maybe if the Farmers Association would come and say, look, we're going to do a show, right? We're going to have an agricultural show and this is our time. We're going to invite attorneys. Then that invitation will come maybe through the Law Society and then you say, come, all these attorneys, come and explain the law to our farmers who we've gathered here. And then that would also go back to what I'm trying to say, like, let's not just make it centralized, our normal places. Let's also try and go to those unentered areas where, you know, you still have farmers who are doing it on maybe a small scale or on a lower level amongst themselves. Because I know it's a well-known thing, amongst everybody. When you want something that's cheap and affordable and you don't have the money, go to Kalahari, you can get a cow or 2 goats and you'll get the land. It's a known thing, you understand? So people know where to go, but it's just a problem of getting the information to those people as well. So I think it's something that would probably come as an invite, then the attorneys would definitely hop onto it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, with I have to agree with you with the exposure that I've had, for associations and all that. It's something that I greatly believe can happen. And somehow, from what you're saying, it's encouraging to find, I think through the vehicle of those associations, we can find, attorneys who can maybe dedicate 10% of their time to these pro bono activities. So I think for that, we align. At least you think the same way we've been thinking, or at least what I've been seeing in these associations where they really want to look at legislative and also legal matters and afford that to their members.
Definitely.
All right? Yeah.
And I'm thinking, based on just what you just said, right?
Yes.
One other solution is to say, let's, if our associations, especially the Farmers Association of Botswana, would come together and say, we need to hold our agricultural districts accountable for the duties, right, that they've been established for. This would lead to better service delivery, and, farmers would also feel, okay, I know where to go if I have an issue in terms of my farming or anything and I need information.
Yeah.
But because we don't have that platform, we have farmers, let's say, my village, where we come from, they don't know half of what they're supposed to be doing, and because of that, they don't take anybody into accountability when information does not reach them as accordingly as other districts within Botswana.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, linking it back to what we're saying, that if then there's also the legislation, there's a bill that's coming that affects agriculture and farmers in that area. If nobody takes it up, nobody tries to discuss it or debate it, or at, community level tries to say, this is what I'm thinking, because maybe they don't have that exposure to the law as per se with attorneys would have. Then again, it's another wasted chance to actually hold people accountable, hold our ministers, hold our districts accountable to say, look, we voted you in, this is what we want. This is what we're doing at ground level.
Yeah.
So I think it's an issue of collaboration with the farmers together with the law as well, to say we need to interpret the law. We need to see if it's actually working on the ground level, to see, does it benefit the people on the ground, or is it just the few who understand? Yeah,
no, big issues there, but I'm sure we'll get there, unity, like you just mentioned, working together as a collective, there's so much that we can do. Yeah. I know that, wildlife is also an issue in the area, and also the slow response in getting help from the relevant entities which would be the Department of Wildlife. Yeah. How has that been for you? I know that you told me a little story offline. Could you kindly share with us?
Okay. So this was, I don't know, I'm sorry, I've lost the terminology in English. Unkwe. There was a leopard just roaming around the farm, right? So our head boy saw it once, like he didn't see it, but he saw the footsteps and he could tell, no, this is a wild animal. And he could see the evidence even that this leopard is eating all the little animals, the small stock that we have, the goats and stuff on the farm. And he was just like, no, I need to keep watching. And it kept getting worse. Then we reported it, that look, we're having an issue to the closest veterinary office. We're having an issue. Look, we have a wild animal here on the loose. We have no idea where it's coming from, how many they are, but we can see the effect, right? I think it took like 2 weeks or 3 weeks. The other thing, right, it was almost like, a con of having a farm in Kalahari. You need a 4x4 car. The access is not easy to access the farms there. The sand is like very steep. So the first issue that we face, resources. You have your office to say, oh no, we only have one car. Oh no, the car's not here. Oh no, we told them, but they're still dealing with a farm next to you by Kakia there or somewhere there, but they'll come to you eventually. But at the same time, you're incurring losses because every day you wake up and one of your animals that you were planning to sell is gone.
It's gone,
You reach out to say, please help me. I can't do it myself because clearly this animal looks dangerous. I need your help. I need your intervention. And in terms of the law, it should be something for self-defense. And if it's not self-defense, then I need your intervention. So it just kept going on. And then eventually they did come, they said, okay, fine, what we'll do, we'll leave a cage, a trap, and then we'll put meat and then, it will come and then, it will be there. And that's what happened. It came, they managed to trap it, it got in the cage. And then again, it was there for another 3 days or 4 days. And it was just a mess. So now it was like, you need to come and take it.
So in your farm?
Yeah, it was just there. Everybody just kept taking pictures, you know, I was so excited, and it was getting very aggressive. You know, it's a wild
I'm
animal.
sure.
So you
Yeah.
had a
Being
mini
raised for
zoo
so
then.
long.
Yeah, no, just it was to die for. Everyone was taking pictures, getting very excited, like, wow, we have a whole leopard over here. But you see, the issue is now what we were saying is, okay, we found one. We don't know how many more, but there's rumors that there's more.
Yeah.
And if you're a farmer who doesn't really have access to a rifle or so forth, then you're on your own. You're just like, at the mercy of the next veterinary officer or the next wildlife officer who's around. And if they've gone to any other farm, then yeah, God be with me.
Yeah.
So I think that was the issue. And then also the compensation, when you do find out that you can put in a compensation claim for all the animals that you've lost, it's not even market related, or it doesn't even come as quickly as it should come.
But what inspired the compensation tariff? Like, what inspired the figure?
You know, the thing is also our laws, I guess, also need to be reviewed because we don't know what inspired. Maybe it's the time when they were being drafted. And that's the other thing I wanted to mention about it, that, you know, when you talk about agricultural law, it's something that sounds so new and so off. Like, what is that? You have, like, when I was trying to explain that you'd have an idea that, okay, you're talking about agriculture, farming. I can tell you that that could work when we're talking about property, you know, when we're transferring cows and so forth and so forth. But when you go specifically, you'd be like, okay, there's a Food Act, and then there's a Plant Protection Act, and then there's regulations and so many other things going on within the Ministry of Agriculture. But that's it. It's not really out there and clear to say, okay, this is what exactly agricultural law is, and this is what it looks like in Botswana, because I don't think it's like a legal field that has been created that we are very familiar with, and people can just say, sure, I'm going to specialize and be an agricultural lawyer. We haven't got it yet. No, not yet.
I think the fact that you alluded to earlier, the fact that you know there's so many things coming together. You have the resources, the land management issues, the actual production related issues with your cattle, how you sell them, how you get compensation, and then the environmental issues. It's I think maybe in the past we just left it and said, okay, those different facets will take care of agriculture. But the problem is they're so spread out, and like you pointing out, you can't just single out and say, okay, agricultural law is this, and it's contained, in its own sort of body of, I don't know what they call it, body of knowledge, or anything of that sort.
Yes. Yeah. I think, it's now becoming more defined because of, maybe when we talk about BMC, when you want to sell your cows to BMC, because now they have their standards, they have their strict international rules. That's where you can see it taking shape, because now you see, okay, these are international standards. This is how you export meat and food products and all that. This is how you package, this is how you label, and it's in terms of rules and regulations and laws. Right?
Yes.
And that's where it's taking shape. And that's where it's very interesting, because now they're even rolling it out to our normal farmers out there in Kalahari and everywhere around the world to say you need to do an EU compliance list in order for your cows to be able to be sold according to European standards, European Union standards. Yes.
So at least in in that way, it's actually reaching. I think it's mainly driven by, the commercial aspect to it, to say, you need to sell your animals on, and these are the requirements. So, through the trail of money flow, that people selling money, and the markets that we're targeting, they're requiring, those laws or regulations, if you might call them.
Definitely.
It's now forcing us to bring it to the level of the farmers out there.
Definitely. Yes, sir.
We once had a chat with someone from the Gang area. Actually, he's the chairman of the Gang Farmers Association, and he was talking about how currently we've been pushing, or in terms of the policy, we've been hearing it from the leadership that we want to increase the head size and all that, and at the same time, it's a bucket that we're trying to fill. But it's somehow leaking at the bottom, because he was just, fully adamant that cattle that are lost due to wildlife are so many, to an extent that they're defeating that same national goal of trying to increase the head size. Would you share the same sentiment?
Yeah, I think so. Even, I don't know, maybe it's just maybe natural causes. I don't know how to
Yes.
put it. Acts of God, where you have your foot and mouth, and then
Yes.
you have your wild animals also just going around and causing damage to crops, and also these animals that we have.
Yeah.
It's also a factor, like you were saying, that decreases the production of our animals, of our cattle in Botswana as well. But then it
Yes.
also depends. You see, I think it also depends on what kind of farmers we're talking to. Because when I'm specific to say in Kalahari, you're talking to a farmer who probably also comes in with like 50 cattle. And then you want to say foot and mouth outbreak, you're taking half of this person's cattle or you're taking all of them. Where do they start? How do they get back to that level? And then you're looking at the compensations they're getting. It doesn't even match one cow. One cow will probably be your 3,000 pula, and then you're just going to probably give them half and say, as you can see, this is an act of God.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it really affects your lower farmer at the bottom of the chain, who's really just trying to put a little bit on the table and then just a little bit for everybody else to eat.
The views and opinions expressed on this chat are that of the individuals and do not necessarily represent or reflect the views and opinions of any of the entities they represent or affiliated to.
Yeah. I think when when we, thank God we have, chats like this where we talk about these issues. But, the agricultural industry, of all industries that I've interacted with, it actually needs, that knowledge and execution of, the rule of the land we've said in the past, where, you know how things go. And the irony is still that being the case, that is not happening. So, maybe it's sad. Well, there's always a starting point to everything. With the conversation that we have, and also yourself, after having interacted, in this and the influence that you have from your background, it's a conversation that can just be started to say, agriculture, its success is hinged really on, how we, there are so many other factors, but one of the ones is how we interpret laws, how we place laws, and how everyone is knowledgeable about what's supposed to be done.
Definitely. I think, sorry, just to take you a little bit back also.
Yeah.
I think also, one thing we never talk about, I think I saw it, is one unspoken part of agriculture and the law. Also, we have a lot of cattle theft going on. I don't know, sometimes it's from within the head boys themselves. Sometimes it's family related, and then sometimes donations that are not really clear cut and so forth. But because you call it like cattle, small stock, we don't really take that into consideration to say that's how we're also losing some of the cows. And that's why we have your cattle branding, and also to contribute the bait system tries to help and stop that. And it's something that we need to take into account and let our farmers, our middle farmers know that there's also the veterinary office, there's also the police office. You can report these things there. Instead of just seeing every day you have 20 cows, next day there are 19, you can't even take anyone into account. The first person should be the head boy, and then the next person should be the police officer to say, look, I'm noticing there's something wrong. And there are these things, like people don't know that you can actually do DNA tests on animals to actually prove that this is my brand, this is my cow.
Yeah.
Does it come at a cost? Saying?
Yes, it does come at a cost, I believe, yes. But you start somewhere, you need to have a police case as well. Then they investigate, and then it depends as well how far it goes. Sometimes it can be a government procedure, but it takes forever. And then if you have the money and you're willing to just finish it up, you can put into the cost as well. And it's just to say, that's how the only way we can deter thieves and protect the farmers, the cows.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just something I've noticed, like, especially in my village. It's just casual, if you steal someone's cow, it's like, oh, it's missing. It's fine. But at the end of the month, you're buying cattle feed, you're investing so much, you can never take it into account that, like, I need to have a record. And it also goes back to what is nice that is coming up, the EU list. You have a list of your cows, you have records. This is my cow, it's brown, it's Tswana, imala, ikhunwane, in Brindule Bukana, it's and these are my cows. If they go missing, I know what to do. I know where to go.
I think this takes us back to the inaccessibility of information. I mean, if they knew that they could actually take it up with the law, I think that they wouldn't be so casual about it. I think that would actually do something about it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, there are two sides to a coin. You know, we can't mention the bad and not shed light on the
Yes.
positives. So what are some of the pros of farming in the Kalahari district?
I guess, yeah, we all know the animals, they are very resistant, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're very good because it's basically like there's no water there for
Yeah.
some last years. It's like a desert basically.
Yeah.
So they're good. They can survive. They're not really prone to a lot of diseases and all that. You have I forgot what they call them, but it's those red, goats, the Kalahari goats.
Yes.
They're very good. And then you have your Sussex cows as well. They're very good breeds, down in the Kalahari area.
Mm.
And then also the grazing land is amazing. It's very huge. And obviously, everybody's in it for the money. So there's lots of money there as well because we also sell in kind. You can bring your car, I give you a cow. You can give me the land, I give you some cows. And we have lots of cows.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think what you're pointing out is it's one of the things in conversations that we usually have is really the importance of or farming or cattle farming, animal farming in rural communities. To say it's exactly as you explained. It's a way that facilitates what do you call exchange of value or even in actually giving some economic activity, which overall leads to the upliftment or rather the enrichment of people's lives in the rural area. There is this vet that I wouldn't mention. Sometimes I think it's just a way of him venting. Sometimes, he talks of or maybe just dreaming and being lost in the dreamland. He'll be living his busy life in Gaborone and, with his clinic, private clinic, blah, blah, blah. Then once in a while, you find him just posting some post talking about how, he compares how he's living now with, say, if he had the opportunity just to have his small herd of cattle out there in wherever. I think he's also from, and now you can do elimination and find out who it is. So he'll be talking about how he can have his small herd of cattle in Kalahari and everything will be fine because you can get the milk, you can wake up and head the cattle. So in terms of the quality of life, sometimes, as much as yes, we do have the right race in the urban areas, but sometimes the richness of life, we underestimate what that thing brings, cattle bring, in terms of bringing purpose and giving, everyone every reason to wake up.
Definitely. And then another interesting part is, I think I was also going to mention it in this show. Even when you have these nice breeds, these really good breeds out there in Kalahari, what you can also do is when you are like stuck for cash, I don't even want to say it like I'm promoting it, but you can also approach the bank and do a hypothecation of those cattle. You value them and then you get them in there. If you have pigs as well, you value them and then you can do a hypothecation over those animals.
So you use them as, do you call it collateral? It's not even collateral.
I was going to say that. It sounds like collateral.
But of course, some other source of income, so it's not, a pay slip from somewhere.
Yes, yeah. No, I think it's amazing. I mean, we're talking about the good things about the agriculture. We've taken a break on crying literally and blaming everything, and just looking at the potential that the industry has. Like you mentioning now, it's just a great source of wealth that can be used in so many ways, that can be used to support other activities that you want to do. Yeah. So I fully agree with you.
Yeah. And even companies, can see how to do. Some do it as syndicates. There's still also guidelines within the Ministry of Agriculture of how to comply and do a syndicate. And then also you can do it in terms of a company. It's not just basic farming now that, I'm just doing it and winging it. Now it's actually something you can do with a constitution, a structure, how we're going to get profits, if we're incurring any losses, how we're going to make sure it's actually a business structure now.
Yeah. And one thing that maybe I interjected when Laura was talking, but I You know how I believe all the life concepts that I've learned in life, in my middle-aged life now, are mainly because, there was a reason, or it was attached to something else. I would know about, say, for example, I would know, just a simple example, I would know about, what can I say? Let's make a simple one. Yeah. Say about cooking, for example, you know how to cook. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then after knowing how to cook, you can learn something else on top of that to say attach it, say learn how to produce your own food, and you attach something else to say what different foods do to you and all that. I think what the agriculture industry is presenting is an opportunity for people to appreciate law by learning it on something that they were doing, rather than it being abstract where you try and say, I'll teach you this, that. Like in that agricultural space, because when you've been taught, well, okay, fine, now that you know how to head cattle and take care of them, now we're going to take another step up and teach you how to know your land rights, your land management. What's already there, and that's the beauty of it.
Yes, and I think basically what you're saying, even when you look at your tourism, your hospitality industry, you can start with agriculture, where you have a cow, then you have 2 cows, then you now go into dairy cows, now you have a milk factory, next thing you have a butchery, now you have a restaurant. There's so many chain events that can happen, economic activity that is so much that just started with 1 cow. I'm just specific, or even you can go to your sheep, right? You can go to your goats. But it all starts with your livestock that started off, and your chickens. You can just start all day and it keeps growing. And if you're also going to be mixed and do your crops as well, your fruit, nowadays people are doing fruit nurseries, right? You can start there as well. Yeah. And then you have, like I'm saying, and that's the sad thing in Kalahari, specifically in King and Sekoma and those areas. We don't have a lot going on in terms of your butcheries, your fruit shops. We all go to Jwaneng to get whatever we need. Even when we go home for holidays, you bring everything that you may need for that duration. Because when you get there, it's just a general dealer and so forth and so forth. But if we had that much empowerment, right, we would be able to go and say, let's start with the chain reaction, that you start with 1 cow, it becomes another, and then you do a dairy milk production and so forth and so forth. Straight from the farm. Yep. You don't have to go far. Yeah.
Yeah, as you said, some of the opportunities that you see when you go home.
Yes, definitely. And it's just because, because at the level I am, it's very difficult for me, because now I have to go to work 8 to 5 every Monday to Friday. And then on the weekend, once in a while, that's when I can go there and say, oh, I'm here, let me help my mom in the way I can. But she's also there doing it full time, and then the traveling in between as well is quite a lot. And then also the process that it takes. I don't know if there would be a better system to do it online. I'm not sure. But the process that it takes to actually sell 1 cow, it's a lot. You have to go there to your veterinary office, and that's what I was saying earlier on, the lack of resources. You try and get there, you plan everything, you called everyone. Then that one day you get there, when you plan, the veterinary office is not in. So you can't do anything. Now you can't even sell your cows. You have to wait for that guy to come in to write that letter for you so that you can be able to sell that cow and come back with it to Gas or to a butchery close by in Jwaneng. You have to wait for your police officer. If he's not in and you don't have the transport to get the cow there so that he can see it and then do the necessary documentation for you, then you have to postpone, unfortunately.
Earlier on, we were asking how, whether there's an incentive for lawyers to be doing some of this work that is not directly billable, as you said. In this case, is there an incentive for government employees to? I know I'm treading on dangerous ground, but is there an incentive for government employees to be really closing these things that you've been talking about, to say there's a delay in this, that really. And if there isn't, where can it come from, and in what form? Does it necessarily come money incentive or some other, to be brainwashed to, at least in a positive manner, such that they can deliver? What's your take on that?
I don't even know if it's like if there's no government incentive, to be honest. It's just people doing their job. Yeah. And the saddest thing is you find there's only 2 people doing their job who are posted at that place in Sekoma. We don't know how many they are. but then you find that most of the time when you actually need most of their services, they're not there. If one person on leave, then you don't get any assistance for that week. Just recently, there was this rolling out of the EU compliance list, right?
Yep.
So the farmers had to go and attend to the veterinary office there in Sekuma. And then, something happened. Well, maybe they had a meeting or something. It didn't happen. So they postponed. Just like that, by word of mouth. And you imagine someone coming from Jwaneng, someone coming from Gaborone. You're talking about someone who's using money. You see, and it's just a problem of either we need to get hold government back to what we are saying, hold government responsible and accountable. That you're a government office, you're a public office. This is what you are do when you are here. So you need to do the job. Yeah, we need more manpower. I don't know what it is. We need more efficient communication methods to talk to the public within the areas. If you're going to send a message, at least also send a message to say we've cancelled. Because you know who's coming. You know the audience that you're dealing with. There's people who have to make money from their personal funds and see how to actually attend and actually do it right for the EU compliance list and so forth.
Yeah.
So many roadblocks, right?
Yeah, I think also the fact that it's a rural area is another challenge. Nobody really pays attention to those areas,
Yeah, but I can imagine the frustration though. I mean, like you said, when you're trying to sell your cattle and then these are the red tapes and hoops and whatever that you have to jump through, and it's a lot.
Yeah. And the sad thing is that it's the law. It's how it is.
Yeah.
It's the procedure. You can't skip anything. You can't say either. Yeah. And then it's at the same time, it's also your fault because now you're stuck when
Mr. Molope.
Yeah, I was going to ask, maybe as a follow-up to that, because it is indeed the citizens' fault. I was going to ask you, Khomusu, to say, in your view, how many people actually know an MP as a legislator and what that means? Or they just know how to come parliament, and that's it.
I think I think what you're saying also, because when we're saying from this side of town, it's like, we know it because it's you voted in this person, it's constitutionally they should go and represent you.
Yeah.
But then now when you're sitting like what you're saying with what's the president who doesn't understand that he's on parliament once in a while, what have you made about it? That's the other problem, that we need to educate people to say, this is how you actually hold people accountable. This is where when you go to a government office, you don't get the assistance. This is where you go. The next level, this is how you escalate your complaint so you can actually get help. You don't give up. You get. And just say, what's that doing? Yeah.
I think the comforting thing, yes. I think the comforting thing is, sometimes I think about these things in the bigger scheme of things, to say, as a nation, as we're progressing with one generation to the other, obviously there are fears and no-go areas for my folks, for my parents, for my mother and all that kind of thing. And me, there are areas that I can get into now without fear, that kind of thing. I was going to say, maybe the hope comes from, that fact that, we, as other generations come through, they're more enlightened than the previous ones. And some of these areas, how, people used to, even just a step in court, they'll just think going to court, you should be a criminal or something of that sort. Or when engaging the law, it should be, something, you don't want to go there, that kind of thing. But I believe, people like yourself and, all the, your mother was also in this, but, for other people, it's more like the new generation coming in. That's the role that they should be playing. I mean, this, what do you call them? Is it the Gen Z? I don't even know.
Yeah, no, we got the millennials, everything.
Yes. It shouldn't just be, generations that are just thought to be about social media and that's it.
Yeah.
We should recognize that fact that, there are some hurdles that they've managed to overcome, and even some of them are maybe psychological. They managed to overcome that, and that's exactly where it, Laura talks about handing over the baton and getting things to be done. They should also lean back and help the other generations with, getting over these things.
Yeah, just the importance of succession planning and carrying it forward and paying it forward and doing all that. Yeah, it's important. Yeah. As a property attorney, please take us through change of land use, transfer of ownership, and so forth. Please take us through the procedure.
Okay, so basically with that, I won't really go much into it, but it's just what I thought
here.
Yes, I just wanted to be general about it, to say just to give advice, right? You need to look at what holds your property. Is it a lease? Is it a certificate? Or is it a registered lease? Or is it just a title deed, right? So these things, if it's a lease and if it's a certificate, then you're talking to the land board. If it's your registered lease, then you're still talking to the land board, but at least it's registered to the deed office. So it's more easier to transfer if it's a registered lease.
Okay.
Yes. So now what's happening with the land boards, like I had tried to mention in passing, is that they're issuing what we call a secure land title, which is more elevated than what we had with the certificates and just your normal lease. So normally it would come under tribal land, then we'd also have your zoning as agricultural land for your farmers and so forth. And in terms of that, you can have agricultural land and maybe commercial, so it's mixed use in terms of that. So now I'm just trying to highlight what normally your land would come under if you were a farmer in Botswana. And then when you want to transfer, then yes, that's when you'd have to maybe, normally now what would come is the renewal thing, the renewal period for your lease. You find sometimes 50 years, 99, depending on where it's registered. If it's a business, then you'd find out how long your lease would be. And the necessary requirements for you to renew it would be with your tribal land board, your land board in that area. So you'd have, I'm not sure what's going on, but you'd have your Khalakadi, you'd have your Mwatu, you'd have your Kweneng, and so forth and so forth. And it would be relevant, it would be shown in your lease per se, or whatever the title you hold to the land would be. So as an advice, it's important to always keep up to date with your title to the land. If it's inheritance, you need to do the correct procedure to get it into your beneficiaries' names and so forth and so forth. So at least you have title to the land. If you want the property long time ago and you didn't finish off the transfer, it's important that you finish off the transfer, especially with the laws changing rapidly like this, so that it is in your names. And as you do your farming and so forth, you are secure and you know that no one is going to come and evict you off the property. Then you've lost your access to the property, you can't farm anymore and so forth. If you're on a lease, right, if it's more than 10 years, you make sure that it's registered at the deeds office if this is in terms of a lease that's registered with the deeds office as well. So there are many issues that I'm just trying to be general because I don't want to confuse, and then anything else, then I advise people to just go to a law firm.
Yeah, I find that land that holds title deed, it's so much better in terms of transfer and as opposed to a lease and a certificate. I found those to be a little complicated sometimes.
Yes, the ones that now you are convincing attorney to do a whole transfer process.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just, I think it's very important because when you have, normally what happens in these areas is that you have your farm and then you have your uncle who gives you a portion and, we'll just talk about it and then you put your cows in there and then 5 years later you're still just putting your cows in there. There's nothing written, no agreement. You don't even know what certificate was going on. And that's why I just want to emphasize that Botswana Kohai should make sure that they know what title they hold to the land. They should approach the land board closest to them to see how they can get that title. If it's in a certificate, how to transfer it from your uncle or whoever. And then if it's within a registered lease, how to contact the deeds office in Gaborone because it's in the southern area and get it into your name. Because it's very important. These things, it's just, you can be 20 years just sitting on land that's not yours. Tomorrow someone passes on and then it goes into the estate and then it's a mess. You can't even claim it now because you've had nothing. No agreement, nothing to show that, Ghana, we had an agreement 20 years ago that I can put my cows in there.
I was going to say that the next thing would be contracts, agreements.
Yes.
Usually they're verbal, nothing is written. I've seen so many stories about people actually fighting, some actually killing each other because of such disputes.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's so...
And also in cows, people also fight about cows. And there's also this thing where you sell cows. Normally it's by oral. like, yeah, I'm selling you 20 cows. This is how they look like. Come and see them. We are not going to write about it. We're not even going to, try and put in the amount. We just agree over the table. So it's also important, like what you're saying. Let's put things in agreement. Let's put the things in writing. Let you and me sign and agree that I'm selling you cows, 20,000. This is how many cows they are. Try and describe them as close as possible, and you'll be, even if I'm not there the next 5 years, we have something that we've written down.
Yeah, and you can actually take people to task that way.
Definitely. And you know, like I was saying earlier on, you can actually purchase things with cows. It's like I've run into an agreement with someone who was buying, and they had like 500,000 plus cows.
Yeah.
Yes. So it's a business, you guess.
No, true, and it should be treated as such.
Definitely.
Yeah. As we draw to the end of our chat, Kgomoso, do you have any last words? Perhaps topics that we have not covered, that weigh heavy on your heart that you would like to address?
Okay, I think just basically just a summary of what we were saying, that, you know, when it comes to agricultural, I don't want people to think of it just cows, just goats, just crops, just fruits. It encompasses a lot of things, right? You have your environmental law issues. We talked about wildlife and your compensations in terms of that law. There's also corporate. You can go into company and see how you can make profits out of farming and take it to another level, make it a business. And then you have your property and land law, how to stay within the parameters of the title that you have to the land. And then we have your administrative law, how to hold your government offices and agencies responsible for their duties, right? Yeah. And then we have your constitutional law as well. To see, okay, like what we're saying also, you have your governing bodies not doing what they're supposed to do that you elected your minister into office for. You can still have your redress as well. Then you have your criminal law, what you do when your cow is stolen or when you have issues with a dispute with your neighbor that relates to a crime, right? Yeah, stock theft and so forth. How do you report and how do you now contact the police to assist you? And then there's so much. There's also your food law and plant protection to see how, if you're going to do farming and make it a business and you're going to open a butchery and so forth, then those other laws of how to package food and all that come into play as well. Yes. So yeah, there's really a lot. So it's something that I feel like agriculture is evolving into that it's more than just cows, more than just it's more of a business, and it's very, very advanced now.
Yeah. Perhaps this is new generation farming.
Definitely.
And what you have outlined, for me, it sort of, really, I was going to say demystify. There's a word that you could use, phrase to say, changing something from something that used to be feared to something that is welcome. Probably, Laura will come up with that phrase that you'll remember. But, you outlining that it's broader than just merely criminal, where law, we're going to deal with it because there's a criminal case. But there's also that part that actually helps you to advance forward. So my appreciation or one of my take homes from today's chat is that, and I think it would be very good if the rest of the population could appreciate that, to say law is your friend. We do know sometimes we are a bit fearful to get into it, either because we're told it's a rich man's game, only the ones who can afford, expensive lawyers or that kind of thing, and we stay away from it. Or sometimes it's really to do with our socialization as Botswana, as a nation, to believe, it's this calm and not understanding you can still be calm, but know your rights,
understand your rights.
And all those things. Law doesn't mean it doesn't mean, what's the word, you being
oppression, even.
So that appreciation, it's what really strikes it with me.
Definitely. Yes.
Are those your last words, Mr. Molokwe?
I think apart from that, just to appreciate Kgomoso, I think, it's been a lot of things that's, it's been a very fruitful conversation. And, I believe, in other stretches, in other things that we'll be doing one or the other, even the pro bono work, or some 5% of her time, if her employer allows, I think there'll be other avenues to work together, and also with Laura, how you would coordinate it. So, my last words is just to thank her for having made the time to have a chat with us. It's really informative, and it gets us to think in different ways and better ways.
Definitely. Khomozo, before we had this chat, I told you how intimidated I am, of the law, and I think I'm certain that I'm not the only one, but you've given me a better understanding that indeed the law is our friend, that we're better off equipped with the knowledge and information, to also protect ourselves and do us, the justice that we deserve. So just thank you so much for making the time to come and chat with us. You've imparted so much knowledge, so many insights, and I'm pretty sure that our listeners, have picked up a few things from this chat and will really, really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you so much for having me as well. Thank you for your time.
And another episode done and dusted. Do join us again, same time, same place. I'm Laura, and this is the ELXA Chat with Pros. The ELXA Chat with Pros would like to extend its gratitude to our special guest, Ms. Khomozo Moagaesi. Thank you for chatting with us. And to you, our listeners, our doers, thank you for tuning in. Till next time, God bless.